Good morning and welcome to Daily Red Devil for all of your latest Manchester United transfer news and talk. Happy Wednesday, everyone. It's match day. We've got the big game tonight, Man United versus Chelsea. But before we get into that, obviously we have lots of Manchester United related news to discuss. Please do me a massive favour and smash a like on the video as well before we get started, and also subscribe to the channel if this is your first time watching. We're only about 30 subscribers away from 21,000, so please do go and subscribe if you haven't already and get involved in the show. On the show this morning, we are going to be reacting to the second part of Erik ten Hag's press conference. So, as you guys know, usually there'll be part of the press conference is released at about 12:30 the day before the game, and then the second half is released at about 10 o'clock. So there's an embargoed section, which was really, really interesting, where ultimately Erik ten Hag calls out these false reports about the dressing room turning against him. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about Mainoo, who looks set to be given a new contract in 2024. We'll give you some information on that. We'll discuss whether we think that's the right decision at this point. We'll also be talking about Manchester United's pursuit of a new centre-back in the short list of players. So we'll be talking about that. Lots of other stuff to get into as well. A little bit of takeover news. As always, make sure to get involved in the comment section. Have your say on all things Manchester United down below. Let me know how you're feeling today. What's your score predictions for the game? You know, just whatever you're feeling today in relation to Manchester United, let me know in the comment section, as I always look forward to seeing what you guys have to say. Right, let's start the show off with some positivity then about Mainoo, because I definitely think this guy is going to be a very special player in the future. Obviously, he did very well against Everton. Didn't do as well against Newcastle, but what do you really expect? I mean, Newcastle are a very, very good side. You're playing away from home and you're playing alongside Scott McTominay, so let's be clear. So the story this morning is coming from Fabrizio Romano, and he is reporting that Manchester United have included a clause into Mainoo's current contract to extend it until June 2028. So that would be another 5 years. That's great. It says the clause is only valid on the club side. United believe Mainoo will be a special talent to trust for present and future. It says salary rise and new deal will be looked at in 2024. So I'm really, really happy about that. Obviously, we know that in the summer, Man City were sniffing around Mainoo. He's been at Manchester United his whole career, as far as I'm aware. You know, he's been here since youth level, since he was a boy. I assume he's a Manchester United fan. I'm pretty sure he is, but don't take my words on that. I'm 99% sure he is, though. So yeah, he's been here obviously since youth level. He's been here his whole career. Other clubs were sniffing around. Obviously, Man City was sniffing around. We've got to try and sign this guy for as long as possible. Now, the one thing we have to be very, very careful about here is, one, not overhyping him too early, and two, not overpaying him too early, because that's something we've done in the past with players, and I think it's backfired. I think in some ways, some players, I'm not saying he'll particularly do this, because I think he does have a good mentality and a good attitude, but we've had a real bad thing in the past of overpaying average players, haven't we? We can all agree on that. For example, someone like Brandon Williams, okay? Brandon Williams is average. He had one good season. I think it was under Van Gaal? Yeah, I think it was under Van Gaal or Mourinho. I can't remember. But he had one good season. And then off the back of that, we decided to hand him a ridiculous contract. Brandon Williams is on about £70,000 per week. Just let that sink in. I don't think he played any football last year. I don't think he played any football the year before that. And now he's out on loan at Ipswich Town in the Championship, who are doing very, very well. So hopefully we actually be able to sell him for some money now, because I imagine Ipswich would want to keep him. He's still only 23 years of age, but we gave him this huge contract. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago at the age of 20. We gave him a £70,000 per week contract, which for me, I just think is far too much. We need to more approach it like we did with Garnacho. Obviously, Garnacho is a special talent. He's a person who I think could go on to genuinely be one of the best players in the world in the next 10 years. Emphasize the word could. I think there's no guarantee with players anymore, but I think he has all of the characteristics to be a very, very special player. He just got a new contract and he's on 50 grand a week, which I think is fair. 50 grand a week for somebody of his quality, who's now starting pretty much every single game, has got a goal in him, works very hard every single match. I think that's a good price to, a good wage to be giving someone of his age. Obviously it sounds ridiculous to me or you, but when you compare that to Jadon Sancho's 350, like there's levels, isn't there? The same with people like Amad Diallo. I've just got all the wages up here on my screen. Amad Diallo's on 30 grand a week. Pilistri's on 20 grand a week. Kobe Mainoo's currently on 10 grand a week. So I would maybe move him up to somewhere between 20 and 50. That would kind of be my limit. Anything more than that, I think would be too much for me personally. You go to the level above that, and then you've got Rasmus Højlund, who's on 85, which I think in hindsight is maybe a little bit too much, to be honest. I don't think we needed to give Rasmus Højlund such a vast amount of money. 85 grand is a lot for a lot of clubs, I think. I know it's not a lot for Manchester United, but considering he hasn't actually started every single game and considering he hasn't scored any goals in the Premier League yet, I think 85 is quite a lot. I mean, if you compare that to a club, say, like Crystal Palace, right? I've got their wages up here as well. Crystal Palace's highest earning player is Michael Olise, who's one of the best players in the Premier League at the moment, and he's only on 100 grand a week. So their highest earning player is on pretty much the same as what Rasmus Højlund's on. So we've got to try and address this, I think. So I'm 100% positive that Kobe Mainoo should be getting a new deal. I think it's the right decision. Al says, when does his contract expire? His contract expires in 2028. But the thing is, right, they'll probably try and tie him down to a longer deal. And obviously, if he doesn't feel like he's getting the kind of money that he deserves, then he could just go to another club, because there will be other people sniffing around him now. Zaid says, we need the board to come out and make a statement about these leaks. They need to assure us fans on who they stand with, manager or players. I'm not saying Erik ten Hag in, but we need these rotten players gone. Mate, I 100% agree with you. This is their moment to stamp their authority down. And I think that when Jim Ratcliffe comes in and Ineos come in, that's something that they're going to do. I think they're going to really, really address these leaks, because that's not how a proper business should be run. Imagine if you, in your workplace, right? Imagine if you worked for, I don't know, let's just say for trending sake, for topical sake. Imagine you worked for Rockstar Games, okay? Obviously the people who made Grand Theft Auto. Imagine if you worked within that company and somebody from within that company was leaking out trailers, was leaking out information and stuff about the game and stuff. Imagine what would happen then. They'd be gone, wouldn't they? They'd find out who the person was and they'd get rid of them. They'd pay them off and they'd be out. Like, we need to be brutal like that, like other competent businesses are run. Because at the moment, we let them get the better of us, and it's just embarrassing, isn't it? But yeah, I agree with you, mate. There needs to be addressed very, very quickly. I've got the dog back up here again. What else we got? Right, let's move on with the rest of the show, though. I will come back to the chat in a minute. So, let's talk a little bit about Erik ten Hag's press conference from last night. So, it got released at about 10 o'clock last night. If you haven't watched it, go and check it out. Very, very interesting. And Erik ten Hag is ultimately asked directly about these reports. And he says that, well, apparently it was only one person, and that kind of says it all. It could be anybody, couldn't it, within that dressing room? It could be somebody who's not getting played. It could be somebody who knows that they're already on their way out. Maybe their contract's expiring in the summer. There's 2 or 3 of those players in that squad whose contracts are expiring. There's people who, like Jadon Sancho, who are completely detached from the first team. Like, there's so many different people that it could be. And I think for them to say that 50% of the dressing room have turned against him, I think is false, because we saw against Burnley, we saw against Sheffield United, we saw against a couple of other teams where we came back and we fighted. If they wanted the manager gone, they would have downed tools then. I think in that game against Newcastle, it's as black and white as, what's this dog doing? Quasi, what are you eating? What the hell is that? The dog's eating something under the table. Quasi, off you go. Go on. Go on. Sorry, the dog's just eating something. Oh, God's sake. He's eating something. He's eating it. I don't know what it is. He's got something in his mouth. I told you shouldn't be up there. You didn't. You just let him. Can you deal with him? Sorry about that. We've got some building work going on our house, so the dogs are living upstairs at the moment. So he's just broken his way up and was eating something off the floor. Don't know what it was. Anyway, the dog is gone. Right, let's crack on with the rest of the show. Where are we? Yeah. So in short, Erik ten Hag completely dismisses these reports. Pointing at these victories where we've come from behind or we've come from against the odds. You think against Nottingham Forest, we were 2-0 down after 5 minutes. You think against Sheffield United, we got that goal in the last couple of minutes. Now, I somewhat agree with Erik ten Hag, but then at the same time, do you think that these players could just be playing for their own pride and their own kind of drive to win a game? Just because, we turn a match around, it doesn't mean that they're doing it for Erik ten Hag. I'm just trying to give a balanced argument here, because I think it's easy for him to say, oh, well, look at what happened at Sheffield United, look at what happened at Nottingham Forest, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, that these people are playing for the badge or for Erik ten Hag. They might just be playing for their own egos because they don't feel like they should be losing against lesser teams. I don't know. It's a difficult one to predict. What else have we got here? Yeah, so I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section below. Obviously, we've got an absolutely massive we've got a massive game tonight against Chelsea. I feel quite confident, to be honest. I think that tonight will be the all-telling game. And what I mean by that is, if we go out and get battered, I think then we can say that, yes, the players have turned against Erik ten Hag. Okay? If they go out and put in another lacklustre performance like they did against Newcastle at home with the Manchester United fans behind them, I think then it would be fair to start having those conversations that maybe the players have down tools, But I'm not expecting that. I'm expecting them to go out with a point to prove, and I'm expecting us to beat Chelsea. Chelsea are 10th, let's be honest. It's not the Chelsea of before. They're 5 points below us. We're all sat here complaining about how poor our season's been. Chelsea have spent $1 billion in the last 18 months and are 5 points below us after our worst start to a season, I think, since 1930. So just let that sink in for a second. We're not playing, the Chelsea of old. We're not playing an informed team. We're playing Chelsea that are in a worse position than us at the moment. So I know that sounds unbelievable because everyone says, oh, how can they be in a worse position than us? We're rubbish. But I think a lot of what's going on at the moment is just negativity from the press and from the media, making up stories and all the rest of it. And hence why Manchester United banned, I think it was Samuel Luckhurst from the press conference. They banned the chief reporter from Sky Sports. They banned a couple of other journalists all from this press conference yesterday because ultimately they're not happy with these stories that are being put out. Probably one person within the squad is leaking these stories. Somebody who's probably not even playing, somebody who's not even anywhere near the first team. They're unhappy and they're thinking, you know what? I don't care anymore. I'm going to leak out these stories. And it's something that needs to be addressed. It's something that needs to be stamped on. Zaid says, Kieran, you are one of the most positive fans I know. You are always confident in a win, no matter how bad we perform. I don't expect a win. I'm thinking that it will be a boring stalemate. The thing is, right, mate, I just think that it's so easy to just be negative all the time in life generally. But especially with football, you've got to try and look at things in a positive light because otherwise it just gets you miserable, okay? If we believe every single story that we see from the press saying that all of the players have turned against them and all of this, like, it would just be depressing every single day because even if we were winning, there'd be negative stories. Even if we were top of the league, I'm telling you, there'll be negative stories. There'll be people saying, oh, this, that, and the other. Like, whatever happens, the press are always going to write bad things about Manchester United. Always, because it gets clicks, it gets likes. That's what they're out to do. They're out to sell newspapers. They're out to sell advertising space on their websites. That's all that these stories are about. It's clicks to bring them in, to lure people into their websites, and to sell newspapers or advertising space on their platforms. It's as black and white as that. So we have to look at it for what it is. I would honestly be gutted if Erik ten Hag went. Out of all of the managers since Sir Alex Ferguson, I think he is the best manager we've had. I think he is trying to instill discipline into these players, and these players are rebelling against it. They don't like being told what to do. I can understand that, right? If you are prime Real Madrid, you've got Zidane, you've got Roberto Carlos, like all of these incredible players, and you've got an ego and you've got a manager coming in who's lesser than you telling you what to do. But just let this sink in for a second, right? Not a single one of those players who started against Newcastle has won a Premier League. Not a single one of those players has won a Champions League. Not a single one of those players has won the Euros or the World Cup. The best trophy that any of those players have won is the League Cup or the FA Cup. Like, just let that sink in for a minute. They don't have this divine right to be able to say whether Erik ten Hag's tactics and stuff are good or not. They're not great players. They're not. It's as black and white as that. So we need to get behind the manager. We need to back him. Obviously, if the club make a decision, and get rid of him, then that's up to them. I'm not going to cry about it. But for me personally, I think it would be the wrong decision. So I'm fully behind Erik ten Hag. Paul says the Chelsea midfield is miles better than ours. I think we'll see Amrabat starting in this game. I think Amrabat will start. I think we'll see Amrabat, Kobe Mainoo. I think we'll go with a 4-3-3 tonight. I think that would be the safest option. I think it'll be, obviously, the defence will be kind of similar to usual. Luke Shaw, it'll probably be Dallo at left back, Luke Shaw left-sided centre-back, Maguire and Wan-Bissaka. That's what I would go with. And then I'd go with a midfield three of Kobe Mainoo, Bruno Fernandes and Amrabat. And then a front three of Garnacho, Højlund and Anthony. That's what I would do. I'd play 4-3-3. I think that would be the most sensible option there. But let me know what you guys think. What do you think the predicted lineup will be? I don't think McTominay will work in this game. I think we do need to see Amrabat and Kobe Mainoo. And then obviously you have Bruno Fernandes as the more attacking midfielder. Because as somebody says, you know, Chelsea have a decent team. Al says Chelsea has a younger team with a better future. They sold a lot of their older players and restocked with young talent. We are bad and the players are old. Mate, I agree with you 100%. 100%. I have no doubt about that. I think Chelsea have a bright future. I think their team's very exciting. If I was a Chelsea fan right now, I would be quite excited because I know that they've got some really, really good players. I know that they've invested well. I know people will say, oh, they spent $1 billion, let's laugh at them, they're 10th and all the rest of it. But give it a couple of seasons, I'm telling you, Chelsea will be right up there. I wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea win the Premier League before us. Let me just say that. I would not be surprised at all. Like, if you look at some of the signings they've made, Nkunku, he's an unbelievable player. He's been injured, obviously. Moises Caicedo, obviously Enzo Fernandez, Mudryk. Like, all of these people will come good eventually. Obviously, Lavia as well. I would probably swap, genuinely, over 50% of their team with our team. I would. I genuinely would. Like, if you look at their defence, that Disasi guy I like. They've got Reece James I like. They've got Fofana I like. They've got some really, really good young players, all kind of around the age of 20, throughout the whole team. Whereas you look at our team, the only young players we really have are like Kobe Mainoo, Garnacho and Rasmus Højlund. That's pretty much it. Obviously, you've got Ahmad and you've got Pellistri, but like they haven't really broken into the team yet. And I'm not 100% whether they actually ever will. Not because I don't want them to, but just because they're not being picked and because ultimately Ahmad's been injured for ages, hasn't he? So yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens. What else have we got? Ernest says they don't like our coach for sure. Mate, the thing is, right, I just don't think they have the right to say that they don't like the coach. Like, what gives them that right to say they don't like the coach? You know what I mean? It's not like they've got 11 Ballon d'Or winners sat there who are saying, you know what, the coach isn't very good, this, that, and the other. Let's be honest, right? This is gonna sound a bit dramatic, but in the grand scheme of things, compared to other top teams, they're a bunch of nobodies, aren't they? Yes, they play for Manchester United, but they're just living off the success of the 90s and the 2000s under Sir Alex Ferguson. To be a Manchester United player isn't what it was 10, 15 years ago. These aren't Manchester United players anymore. It's as black and white as that for me. And they're living off that. You know, they're living off that success of old. And they're rinsing it. And none of them have a leg to stand on for me personally. I genuinely believe the only player in that team that would probably get in maybe Man City's team, maybe Arsenal's team, maybe a Liverpool team is Bruno Fernandes. I genuinely believe that. I don't think a single other one of those players wouldn't. Rashford wouldn't. Højlund wouldn't. Anthony wouldn't. Varane probably wouldn't these days. Lindelof wouldn't. Maguire wouldn't. You know, Luke Shaw maybe as a backup. Like, I genuinely believe there's one player there who is of that level. Jennifer says we should bring back Varane and have Luke Shaw. Mate, I'd be open to that. I would. I think that'd be interesting. I would. Michael says every time Rashford gets stick, a leak comes out to divert the attention away from him. Yeah, mate, I'm not... The thing is, right, we all probably have ideas of who the people who are leaking stuff out, but obviously this is I'm putting these videos up on the internet, so I'm not gonna... That's something I won't do on this show, is start false stories about people and say, oh, I think it's this person, oh, it has to be that person, because I don't think that's very fair. It isn't very fair, is it? Because you might think it's Rashford, but it might not be Rashford. You might think it's Harry Maguire, but it might not be Maguire. Like, nobody knows. Unless a well-sourced report comes out saying who it was, then I think it's a little bit unfair to kind of speculate. But I just wanted to touch on one more thing about players' mentality really, really quickly. So obviously, there was a story that came out a couple of days ago Sorry, it wasn't a story. It was an interview with Nemanja Matic, who was, I can't remember what the blog was, but it was an interview that he's just done about his time at Manchester United, right? And really, really interesting comments that came out. He says, among the players, so he was talking about players being late, and he was talking about how he implemented a fine system, Nemanja Matic, because players kept being late, right? This shows what a true leader and someone with that elite mentality does. He wasn't even the captain at the time, but he instilled his own rules for people being late. So he says, among the players who would always be late were Paul Pogba and Jadon Sancho, plus a couple of other players. The rest of us who were always on time were angry, so we decided to form a kind of internal disciplinary committee with me serving as the president. He says, I put a sheet of paper up on the wall where I documented the names of individuals arriving late. During one particular season, we collected around £75,000 in fines, blah, 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 blah. So this goes back to 2, 3, 4 years ago when Jadon Sancho first joined, that we've got Nemanja Matic, who has achieved way more than any of those players in our team at the moment. Somebody who I think I respect, somebody who I think, has had a very, very good footballing career, is still playing at Roma at the moment, and that he ultimately had to form his own made-up committee to discipline players like Jadon Sancho and Pogba for turning up late every single day. And that just shows what we've allowed to happen at Manchester United over the last 10 years. If that was in Sir Alex Ferguson's day, they would just get rid of the players. It wouldn't be allowed, If anybody saw that Beckham documentary, like, he was going off to London to visit Victoria and then would still be in training the next day on time, but he was getting fined and he was getting told off for it because the manager didn't like him going and having a life outside of football. I mean, these players think they're superstars. They're on Instagram. They're off in their private jets. They're, going to... I saw Jadon Sancho was at 21 Savage, some rappers like club party the other night. And, like, do you know what I mean? It's like the mentality has completely changed. And I think what Erik ten Hag is trying to do is take us back to the mentality of where we were under Sir Alex Ferguson. Is he going to be able to do it? I'm not sure. And I just pray that when Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos, Paul Mitchell, Jean-Claude Blanc come in, they all back him, they get behind him, and they just get rid of all of these bad people within the club and they start fresh. And the most important thing when they're recruiting new players is that they find out what they're like as people, because we've been burnt so many times by bringing in people who are just shirt sellers, just to maximise the Manchester United brand, but not actually people who, one, fit the philosophy, because we don't have a philosophy, and two, have the right mentality. Pogba didn't have the right mentality. Sancho didn't have the right mentality. The list probably goes on and on and on and on, doesn't it? There's so many names, isn't there, of people who we've signed. I mean, Di Maria is another one. Like, people who didn't want to be here, people who were coming for the money, coming to boost their brand, and they didn't care. And that can't happen, and that needs to change. But I thought that was really, really interesting. I'm going to wrap the video up here, guys. I will obviously be live. Will I be live at 6 today? I don't think I will be live at 6 today because obviously we have the game. But yeah, I will be live as soon as the game finishes, hopefully with a win. Do let me know in the comment section, guys. What's your score prediction for the game? Let me know how you think Manchester United can turn a corner here. Have a lovely day, everybody. Try and stay positive. If you're in the UK, wrap up warm because it is very cold. And I'll speak to you all later. Have a good day, everyone.